So let's start the second panel. The second panel is on international dimension of this issue of impact of employment in digital economy. And I have to say that this book that we are presenting also today has a great contribution from the international part, because has a very interesting mix of papers that covers all the OECD countries, the US in particular, the Canada, Europe, and also Sri Lanka. And I think it's one of the values of this book, is offering this very broad international perspective. What are the basic message coming from, let's say, the international part of the book, to some extent? First of all, this is something that has been also mentioned by Eli before. Job displacement is a short-term issue. This is a paper from an economic literature from the OECD, basically saying that the investment in ICT have no effect on the labor market in the long term. And this is, why is that? Because what's happening is that in the short term, there is a reduction of cost. ICT investment being a reduction of cost of producing goods, but this reduction in cost increased demand for new products, and this compensates the effect of reduction in cost. In other words, the substitution effect and the scale effect compensate each other. This is an interesting issue. The only problem is say that this adjustment process lasts about 20 years. And we know that 20 years, it's a long time today. This means losing an entire generation. So for policymakers, it's extremely critical, this issue. Second one, routinization. Routinization, we all know, is a process for which of substitution for computers of work that do routinary jobs. And we'll see from next speaker how this routinization is operating in Europe, and maybe some comparison with the US too. But there are some interesting results that have strong policy implication. The third message is that broadband has overall a positive impact on employment, but there are also some side effects, especially in specific sectors like tourism or rural areas, where there is a positive effect in increasing communication and productions and services, but people are displaced, do not find the same job as they will find this job in more metropolitan area, because there are startup or new company that can absorb these jobs lost there. So it is something that needs to be taken into account for policymakers. I was yesterday, 2 days ago, at the Inter-American Development Bank presenting the book. They say, well, Lorenzo, we are promoting broadband. You are saying rural area that this should not be done. No, the issue is that it's important to know that there are these side effects that need to be managed by policymakers. There is also an interesting paper because I think one of the issues that we have here in measuring the quantitative impact of this phenomenon is that we don't use more micro, to some extent, analysis. And there is one paper from a professor from London School of Economics that tried to modeling employment from bottom up. In other words, they consider the impact of a given amount of investment, and they calculate exactly the number of jobs created and job lost. Out of that, the picture they come out from some countries like Italy, Turkey, and England, and some sector like the cloud, it's quite positive overall. Then we have this, we'll talk about that probably later, this difference of wage and job polarization across country, difference between the US, difference between and Canada. But there are also two interesting dimensions. One is the one that's suggested by the paper from Sri Lanka. There is, for developing countries, there is a positive role the online platform can play. Is the one of job matching and transforming informal work into formal employment, especially, like I said, for emerging economy. And this is something important from a transitional perspective, because this can help working, find job, and in phases which they have to change job. Last but not least, it's the impact that structural change in US infrastructure that we are facing now, from a rigid hardware-based architecture to a software-based infrastructure. This idea that software today is eating the world, the world, everything is becoming softwareized, and what are the implications for employment. Having said that, I would like to start to give the floor to our two speakers today. One, of course, being international, is from Rome, the capital of the world. And so it's Professor Paolo Naticchioni, Associate Professor of University of Roma 3. He's the contributor with a group of econometrician and researcher, Italian researcher. Italians like very much labor market. They are all involved in the labor market, because maybe they come also, there is a strong trade union, and so this tradition of studying intensely the labor market. So I would like to give the floor to Paolo. Just a second.